Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devin Decker, and joining me, my host companion, Sejan Sarowick. Sejan?
You find them bathrooms yet?
No, I haven't.
Okay, see,
But
'cause they're not there.
let's be honest about my Mario Golf experience. That first course is way too easy.
Yeah.
XC Golf, I really enjoyed. A lot of people have been kind of saying XC Golf is not fun, or it's like a huge ramp up.
Actually, a lot of people have been saying it is the game killer. That it is the
Really?
reason to not play that game. But yeah, no, good.
I think it's because I've played Battle Golf. If you haven't done Battle Golf before you've done the XC stuff, then you're not thinking strategically about how you want to approach the holes.
And to be completely fair, it is a hotly debated subject. It is not across the board that people are saying that. It would appear to me that the people that are saying that they're not enjoying the game, majority of those people are saying they're not enjoying the game because XC golf doesn't make sense to them in some fashion. There's also a lot of talk about how later in the game you learn how to do things like lob shots and stuff. And people are like, if we had known that before, then XC golf would have changed. But it's a weird thing because like you can do all of that stuff before you learn
You're taught it. Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's just a matter of at some point it becomes like detrimental to the story that you need to know how to do it, so they force you to learn it. It's not really like they introduce it later. It's weird.
That's
but
where
yeah,
I
sorry,
am
so
right now. I have just been told find the master at Weather Wild to learn how to lob shot because
so fucking wild.
It,
The story to this game is so weird.
Bonnie Green's, like that first course, that Bonnie Green's course was it was boring. Like I didn't have any fun with it. I think because it was so easy. And then the XC golf, I loved. I thought that was fantastic. True to Devin Decker nature, I think, where I'm going to be a contrarian. But not even knowing that, like as soon as I tried it, I'm like, oh, I really like this. Like I have to look at the elevation and sort of plan out the smartest route.
Yeah, it definitely took me 2 or 3 tries to get through it, but there was never a moment where I thought this ruins everything for me. It was, oh, this is a new way of playing that they have introduced that I appreciate any of that sort of stuff.
Right. And then Balmy Dunes, I appreciated the water mechanic that you need to stay hydrated, but the shirt that you buy there trivializes that whole thing.
Yeah, pretty badly, yeah.
And the final course where you're actually competing against Chargin' Chuck and Boo again, that is, you don't need to worry about your water consumption.
No, because the water's been released at that point.
Yeah.
Right?
So you just I just put on my attack clothes and it made that very easy as well. It's
very easy. The story mode is extremely simple, and I think it's supposed to be because all story mode really serves to do is help you build your me
up,
golfer. Yeah. That's really all it's there for. So, so you said you're just kind of in Wildwoods and you have to go meet Master Duff and all that. Okay.
I ran into. I mean, I'll be honest. I ran into a little bit of trouble. The first one where it's finish 2 over par or better. That one, I messed that up because I forgot that in the rain, your ball doesn't roll as far. And I'm like, perfect. I'm going to nail this. I'm going to end perfect +2 because I hit the water because I'm an idiot. And then I'm like, oh no, the rain. I didn't compensate enough for rain, just the slope. So that sucked. And then the one with the time limit golf through 9 holes. I ended up failing that twice because I don't love that it takes the 30 seconds away when you swing. So I'm like
doing that. I'll have to go back and look at that.
So I'm like, oh, I have plenty of time. I'm set, right? Like I'm at 106. I'll swing and then I'll still be there. It doesn't add it after the fact, which sort of makes sense based upon what that challenge is, but it does it as you're playing. And I ended up running out of time because I went to swing my putt and I went from 33 to 30 in the time it took to do that. And that forfeited me because I was below 30 seconds.
Ooh, gross.
So I'm like, oh, that felt real awkward because I'm 33.
That feels cheap.
This is not far at all. I'm going to put it right in. And it did not happen.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have so I played through the story of that game, and then what you can do at the end is you can just go back and it restarts you just before the final battle. But you can because it's open world-ish, you can go back and redo courses, redo practice and stuff like that, and keep building your RPG guy up. So if I had to quantify it, I've probably gone through the story 3 or 4 times now. But what I've done is I've just gone back, started at the beginning, and just done every course and every practice thing like 3 or 4 times, because it's so quick and easy to get through. And then what I can do is build my me up, and then I hop into online like battle golf or tournaments and stuff like that, and I'm just wrecking people because I don't know why people are on playing online with like level 60 characters, and I'm at level 93, and I just don't. It's not that they should be responsible for monitoring their own fun. It's another failing on Nintendo, not understanding the internet, not having ranked lobbies or anything like that for this game yet. And I don't think they intend to, because I think their intention is everybody will build their character up. They are under the impression that I think everybody's just going to have so much fun ranking their character up that they're just going to keep doing it. And so then the idea is everybody's going to just be level 100 at some point, and that's when the real tournaments are going to begin. And I bet that's when we start to see Nintendo really release a bunch of stuff like tournament weekends and prizes and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, you also need to consider the meta of it, unfortunately, and that everybody that you're seeing online being at 60 really reeks of the meta of Demon Souls, where like it's everybody's like, oh, don't level higher than 120, and it's like, but that's the whole point of the game, is to keep making yourself better, because the PvE gets harder. But if you want to do PvP, don't go higher than 120. And it's like, okay, but so how am I playing the game? What am I supposed to do? And then the other thing about the meta is there was already a tournament in Mario Golf. Grand Pooh Bear held his Mushroom Masters tournament on Saturday.
Nintendo sanctioned?
No, not Nintendo sanctioned. Red Bull sponsored Grand Pooh Bear thing. It was 8 players. It was an invitational. I'm trying to think. I know his name. It starts with a W. Oh, I can't remember. That's who ended up winning, though. I think it's like Winky or something like that. Ended up maybe Walkie. It's something like that. I don't remember. Because I didn't watch it. There were people that I knew who were competing in it, and as soon as they dropped off, I'm like, I don't really care anymore. And part of the reason why I didn't care, like, is what you're talking about. It wasn't people allowed to use Mii's. It was strictly limited to the core cast of characters, and you couldn't use any of like the star or superstar clubs. It was all default.
What? Okay. I mean, okay.
I mean, you know, to be fair,
that sounds interesting. When everything else is happening, like if we're watching tournament after tournament of Mii's or Superstar Mario versus Superstar Bowser and stuff like that, which from what I understand, those characters, like once you get superstar sets for a lot of these characters, they're just insanely OP, which is rad, because I haven't even touched unlocking club sets for other characters yet. I've been so focused on getting my Mii upgraded. And once I get to that point, and once I see other people doing a bunch of that stuff all the time, having tournaments with these kinds of limits will be interesting. And I guess maybe this early on, having a tournament with this limit is almost kind of necessary, because not everybody's been able to really get into the meat of the game yet. But that just seems like it's doing a disservice to the game, not kind of showing off what the cool parts of the game. Like what you're talking about is such a vanilla like core to the game that if this was my only introduction to Mario Golf Superstars, I'd be a little let down by what that, because that's not where this game is like special to me.
Well, I mean, I think where I really lost interest is that the picking of the characters was done in a draft style. So whoever got that first pick is probably the person who's going to walk away in the best place. Because you pick either a power hitter or someone who, like, if you're one of the later people and all of the people who can hit like higher than 220 have been picked,
right?
Like you're at a disservice. I know it's not just about driving, but from the tee, getting distance gives you a huge advantage in the game of golf. I mean, that's what Happy Gilmore is about. That's all
Well,
the
and
movie Happy Gilmore is about.
so the way that that's normally supplemented in other golf games, because like that's a very similar tournament style to things like Everybody's Golf slash Hot Shots or whatever version of it you play. But handicaps are instituted. Do they do anything like that, or was it like if you're the last person to pick, you also get like a -1 handicap or something to start the game with?
As far
Like,
as I know, I mean, it looked like this one. They announced that this tournament was going to be happening before the game released.
oh,
So it was like one of those situations where these 8 people buy the game when it releases on June 25th, and then they compete a week later.
okay. So maybe they didn't know all of the mechanics getting into it, which
Right,
is
and I think they
another
weren't
interesting-
sure of all the rules either, because
Yeah.
the announcement that it was going to be no me stuff and just the default clubs for everybody felt like a later thing that was revealed from where I was collecting information.
Interesting. Yeah.
Like, oh, this will unbalance the tournament, so we need to put those restrictions on. I think it's something that could grow, but the world that you're talking of, where everybody is using their own me that they've built and developed,
Yeah.
seems like that would be more fun for that type of stuff. And it
Well,
makes me wonder how Nintendo's going to approach it.
Yeah, this is actually very secretly Nintendo taking a stab at Everybody's Golf tied up in a new Mario Golf game. The Mario aspects of this game are the weakest, and they are going to be they're going to be a non-starter in about 3 or 4 months if anybody's still playing this game, because as the quote-unquote discussion that we had last week, longevity is always an issue with Nintendo games, and some people it stick around and some people don't, and so I'll be very interested to see what Nintendo does with this as well, just based on entirely like who's still playing, because my biggest fear is that a lot of these guys that are getting out into tournaments now and playing with 60 level Miis, or just playing with stock characters and no clubs unlocked because they're just not taking the time to do it. If they don't push themselves to try the game in that fashion, like if this is just the version of the game to them and they don't want to play in a month, I can't blame them. Like the core game when you start the game up is in a lot of ways like really a hindrance to what is special about the rest of that game, like the things that you unlock and the powers that you get and the ways that the courses can be played and changed and manipulated. And then like Battle Golf, for me, Battle Golf I keep forgetting is a mode in this game, because in the story mode you never play it. It's like you're not the story says you're not allowed to play Battle Golf until you have a platinum badge, but like you get to the end of the story and you're awarded your platinum badge, and that's it, credits roll. It's not like you then go and play Battle Golf. So as somebody that has not broken out of that game mode yet, I keep forgetting that battle mode is even there.
Yeah, I love battle mode. I think battle mode is my favorite of them, because it is that, yeah, well, when it worked. I don't know. That sucked. Like, playing regular golf was, I mean, I don't know. Nintendo still needs to figure out online, which is a problem. I hate that.
I will point out some of that was probably me. I mean, internet has not been kind to the Midwest in general, but also right now we're going through things like thunderstorms and then heat waves, which is not great for any infrastructure. So like we've lost power 2 or 3 times in the last week. We've lost internet at least once. So like it could just be that my internet was just running like crap, and Nintendo or not, we might have had, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we've had issues on PlayStation before and things like that too. Not nearly as game-breaking or ending as it was this weekend, but, so some of it is that. But some of it is definitely Nintendo not being able to then kind of correct themselves when that shit happens. I mean, like, one of the reasons we stopped playing this weekend is because I took batteries out of my controller to replace them. That should not be game-ending.
Yeah, that's true.
like me having to replace the batteries in my controller because mid-game I realized that I was getting a little drifty is not a reason for the whole thing to fall apart, Nintendo.
I mean, I can also attest to that, because I was trying to play online with streamers and I finally got into a room and I was excited to do that, and then my battery died on my Pro Controller, and I was in the process of plugging it in, and then my battery died and it just dropped me. And I'm like, oh, that's fun. That's
Yeah.
I don't know why that separates my entire system from the internet, my controller losing power, but nice job, Nintendo. And it's not even like we were in a game. We were in the lobby before the game, and it popped me out.
Yeah, it's weird. The Nintendo definitely has to kind of get their infrastructure in place on that online stuff done ASAP. It's something that we have complained about on this show alone for years, and like we're not even the most like we're the kind of guys where no matter what that issue may be, we're still going to still look at Nintendo. I know a lot of people out there aren't, like, and every day that they don't have that infrastructure being worked on in some fashion for without it improving in any way, they're losing more and more people to the argument that Nintendo is just doesn't care about gamers anymore. And I can't I can't deny people when they're like, yeah, but they don't pay any attention to what people actually want on their system. And it's just like they do. They what they do is they pay attention to what like 5-year-olds want on their system. They're not paying attention to what like people that are actually spending money on their games want, which is such a weird business model. But like
I mean, it's an Ouroboros effect as well, because Nintendo's infrastructure is bad, so those people who care about the infrastructure, the older people, the capital G gamers,
yeah.
they move away from something like Super Mario Maker 2 because it becomes like a slideshow when you're playing with 4 strangers online. Right. And then because Nintendo sees that there is no online presence for the game, that's why support for Super Mario Maker 2 is done. And it's like, you know that like if you fix the one problem, people were playing it like crazy despite its problems, but then when you're like, we're not going to do anything about this, people left. People went to do other things.
Yeah. Yeah, man. But no, I'm glad that you stuck with Mario Golf, and I know it's a bit of a slog for you. So like, I appreciate you checking it out again some more because like I cannot believe how much this game has grabbed me in like silly ways. Like the fact that you can play just 3 holes of golf, just set up 3 holes of golf, make it speed golf so it goes really quick, and then just jump in, bang it out, and be done in 5 minutes. This is not the way that I expected to be playing Mario Golf. So like, there's some stuff in there that's really cool to me, and like maybe this game is not going to last for other people, but I am super pleased to have this game for myself at least.
And honestly, for where we're sitting at in the Decker base, playing a full 18 holes after a night of like heavy Dale doing Apex and me doing whatever it's caught my fancy for the night as like the cool down has been magnificent. So that right there is saying that Mario Golf Super Rush is catering to a lot of different people in its audience, and that's impressive. The only thing I don't like is the boomer golf versus zoomer golf.
Now they're not calling it that, right? Am I?
No,
like,
no, Nintendo hasn't. It's just
it's the community.
It's the community is like, I don't want to play zoomer golf, boomer golf all day, and it's just what really interests me is that the OPP divide seems to be enough for people who would prefer the speed golf mode to the people who would prefer regular golf from their Mario Golf. But
yeah, man.
That's just how it goes. So I hopefully over this next week I'll finish it. I mean, once I actually buckled down and just got over myself with the fact that like this is kind of easy, and it being easy isn't hyper fun. I mean, I plowed through all that other stuff this morning.
Yeah.
I was up at 8 o'clock and plowed through to where I am in the game.
Yeah.
And if I didn't have other things I needed to get done before we recorded, I probably would have finished.
Yeah, it's very simple to get through, but that to me is not like a negative against it.
No,
I
don't. I think that's actually a big positive.
Yeah.
I think the only negative of it being so quick to get through, is what I've seen online from people talking about it, is once you've done everything, it doesn't reset.
Right.
Like the little side stuff doesn't reset, and that seems like a detriment. But it's good that you can do the regular courses again.
Well, and you can do the practices and stuff again. You just got to remember who to talk to. And part of the problem is that there's a million fucking NPCs on the map, and more than half of them don't have anything to actually say. But you can go back and do like the practices again. You just got to find them and then set them up again. Yeah. And you don't get, you got a couple of 100 XP for it, but I mean, it's something, especially when nothing's worse than playing 18 rounds, getting 2 levels up, and then you almost get a third and you're off by like 50 XP. So that's such a pain in the ass. But what they've done is, because you can then run to one of the practice guys and do a couple of putts and then suddenly get 200 XP. Boom, you've got your third level again. Yeah, well, and we'll talk more about it when you level up a bit more, because there's also some story stuff that is just fucking batshit in that story.
I mean, I think that's my biggest disappointment, and I'm not really a story guy, is the fact that so far the story just has kind of not been there. It's just like, why don't you go play around at golf with this course? Oh, yeah, you're a copper now. And I'm like, okay, I was alone on the course. I leveled up. I beat myself, and I win.
Yeah, I won't say that the story ever gets any deeper, but the story definitely goes to some places that are worth, like, having a beer and trying to figure out what the fuck Nintendo was thinking.
Excellent. And that sounds like a wonderful place to pick it up next time we talk on the Say Report. So let me get there and we'll see it. So I wanted to lead off with this because I know that some of our listeners are a little tired of all the iCarly content, but I promise this is going to be quick. If this is longer than 5 minutes, then, you know, get me on the Twitter at Devin D. Decker, and I will compensate you for every minute over the 5 minutes I've promised. And all I want to say is the 5th episode of the iCarly reboot is the first good episode of the iCarly reboot.
Oh shit. Okay, all right, man. Hey, finally picking up. Well, you know, they had to really establish that lore for people that weren't into the series before, you know?
That's crazy. That's the dumbest thing that you could have said about why the 5th episode is so good. Because the 5th episode is so good because of how heavily it leans on the lore that came before.
Nice.
It's referencing, I believe, the 8th episode of iCarly in, like, tremendous fashion.
Rad.
And it really I'm glad that I stuck with it, if going forward the episodes are going to be the same quality as this 5th episode. But you know, it also made me think about something that I really wanted to discuss today, it being the 5th episode, and that's the 4-episode test. Because we've gotten to the 4th episode of Disney Plus series that I'm pretty sure we're both watching, right?
Yeah. I wasn't. Yes, I have definitely watched 4 episodes of Loki. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, that's what we're going. I'm going to Loki, but then other like 4-episode things that I've sort of been dipping my fingers into and enjoying or not enjoying. But Loki. We touched on when Loki first came out that a 6-episode series, it's difficult to have swear by the 4-episode test.
Right.
Like, it really sort of lives or dies based on the first episode.
Yeah, because story-wise, content-wise, like structure-wise, it really has to ramp that up. You've only got 6 episodes to do a story, so you don't have the time to waste on 4 episodes.
Yes, and also, I mean, the 6-episode model really comes from British television. I don't feel bad saying that.
In the series model, as opposed to the season model, yeah.
Precisely. So, because they've, like, we're going to give you this money to make shows, and that money will go a lot further if you do 6 episodes as opposed to 24 episodes.
Right.
But it's interesting that you look at 6 and 24 as them, because I think that's where you get the idea of the 4-episode test, because, you know, 6 goes into 24 4 times. So an American television series kind of has to take 4 episodes to do what a British series does in 1. That checks out,
sure.
Right? Like ratios and such.
For sure, yeah, and I want to make sure I put a caveat on this, and I'm not automatically on board with the idea that just because an episode is 6 series, British or American, that makes it instantly better, inherently better, right?
No.
Like there are plenty of 24-episode series that I think are fucking stellar, and they take 4 episodes to really establish the world and build, and those 4 episodes are good the whole time. It's not like they get a pass on being shitty for 4 episodes and then suddenly they get to be good again. Like there's a lot more nuance to it, but the idea being that like what a 24-episode season has to do in so much time, a 6-episode season has to do it 4 times faster.
Right. I mean, yeah, I mean, the whole idea of the 4 episode test, to get a little Webster up in here, is that give a show 4 episodes before you write it off.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, is that, and I've lived by that a lot, because if I based my feelings off of the first episode of most of the shows that I like would say I love, I probably wouldn't love those shows. Especially when you consider that a lot of the time, the very first episode is the pilot. The
Right.
second episode is, for all intents and purpose, a new pilot.
Right, right.
Where
We
the stuff that
exactly
worked
what
from the
story
first
is.
one
Yeah.
gets ramped up, and the things that didn't work, like, bye, Scooby-Doo's brother.
Well, and for me, it's not even a matter, again, it's not a matter of things being good or bad in the first 4 episodes. What it is for me is 4 episodes is a good, healthy chunk of show for you to know what this show really wants to be. You know, maybe one episode was a little bit stronger in one area than another, but another episode made up for that, and you start to realize the balances that they're working with and what they are focused on as creators. So, like, I may not like the first episode of a thing because the story's crap, but like 4 episodes in, I may learn, like, oh, this isn't about the story though. This is about like getting invested in these characters and really just watching them in odd situations. So like, I think of something like Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Like the first episode or two of that show, like I remember watching and thinking like, oh, it's like Cheers, but everybody's shitty. And then I realized, oh no, it's not Cheers at all. The fact that they own a bar and the fact that there's a bar to like in the background really isn't important to the plot. And as we learned all these seasons later, the bar is nothing. Like the bar is just a plot device for certain episodes, and other episodes they could just be anybody, right? But there was definitely this moment in the beginning where I was just like, okay, it's about these guys in a bar in Philly, and so I had to learn that that's not what they were trying to do.
Right, and they do that in 4 episodes. They teach you that in 4 episodes. And then by the second season, when Danny DeVito is there, it's a whole new fucking ball game.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the thing, is that shows grow and evolve, and I would definitely say it's been kind of weird with these Marvel series that are specifically on Disney Plus that do seem to still live and die by the 4 episode test and model. Like WandaVision specifically, I thought, like, okay, so that's why the 4th episode, they really clued you in on what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see why after that one, my father was like, I'm done with this series because I thought it was one thing, and it's clearly not.
Right, exactly. After 4 episodes, it became much more apparent what that show was trying to do. WandaVision's a really interesting example because it takes the idea of the 4 episode test and then like really pushes its limits on that. Like it kind of dares you to watch 4 episodes to kind of get what's going on, as opposed to other shows that are like desperately trying to establish every episode what like this is the reason to stick around. We promise to give us 4 episodes to really hammer home this is the reason to stick around. Whereas WandaVision was like, give us 4 episodes to finally reveal why you should stick around. So it's very, very interesting play on that concept.
Yeah. And then, Falcon and Winter Soldier, I feel like a lot of people, I mean, I've talked with people just this weekend who fucking hated it. And I was like, really? Like, hate? Hate is the word that you would use for it?
That's such a weird, yeah, that's so weird. I mean, like, to me, my biggest qualm with Falcon and Winter Soldier, and why I think I might consider it the weakest, is that it doesn't do anything with the series structure that couldn't have been done in a movie. Like it could have just been a Falcon and Winter Soldier movie, and like, maybe it would have been 2 or 3 movies in order to get all of the story that they got in, but that was about it. Like WandaVision, the structure and the need for there to be a break between each episode is like inherent to, like, especially when you're talking about the episodic nature and the time changes, right? And with Loki, there has definitely been a feeling that I kind of wish I was watching it all in one chunk, but there's so much going on and so much to establish for me to parse out that I don't feel like if I was sitting in a theater I'd be happy, like having to like think about some of the stuff that's going on the meta level with this story. So like I really appreciate the being able to be at home and talk about it with friends and family type thing that this is giving. Whereas Falcon and Winter Soldier, my only real issue with it is I was like, yeah, I could have seen that in the theater. I didn't need that to be a 6 hour thing at home. That could have been two movies that I watched in cinemas.
Yeah, Falcon and Winter Soldier felt the most like we have a script for this and we're going to expand it into a series.
Yeah.
Where Loki and WandaVision felt like we are writing these to be television series.
Right.
And there was a just thing released about how Phase 4 was affected by COVID. I didn't get a chance to read it, but I just saw it this morning, and I'm interested. I'm curious what they say the change was, because it feels like that was sort of the change. Loki always felt like it was going to be something episodic in nature, trying to tell a bigger story. Ditto WandaVision, because we've given these guys such a short stick before that you deserve more time with them than just like a single movie would be fair to do.
Yeah, I'm curious what the issues, I guess, were with Falcon and Winter Soldier, because like it to me it was the most standard Marvel fare out of all three of these shows so far, and that's not to me a problem as somebody that loves the Marvel movies and loves the Captain America story. So seeing what happens now that Steve is gone, like I loved all of that, but that would be my only real criticism that I could think of personally about that.
Yeah, I mean, I loved my time with it. I really enjoyed it, but I'm after that discussion with like it was weak. I kind of hated it. Like I understand better how someone could feel that way and the why of feeling that way, and then especially when they're like, "But I love what Loki's doing," and I'm like, "Yeah." But Loki inherently, because of everything that's at play, and I'm using my mother as sort of the litmus test for this, I think that she likes Loki because she gets to think about it for a week. Mm-hmm. Because she gets to ruminate and consider what was going on, and that is why she said, I really like Loki. And I remember it was like Friday morning, like we had watched on Wednesday night, and it was Friday morning, and my mother, like the first thing out of her mouth when she saw me in the morning was, how are Loki and Sylvie going to get out of this? And I'm like, I mean, that's the question, right?
Right.
I know what I would try to do if I were in that situation. And it was interesting to have that discussion. Very similar to her, like, failing to come to grips with the TVA and their whole mission, because she's like, why doesn't a variant get to live? And I'm like, that's a good question. That's what makes the TVA fascists. And she's like, oh, so that is how I'm supposed to feel.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, yeah, kinda. That's a thought process you should be having. But now that Loki has passed that 4-episode, like, I guess barrier is what I'm going to use.
Yeah.
They weirdly sort of tried to live or die by that one as well, I think. Especially when there are all these people who didn't know that there was a credit scene.
Yeah.
Have you been lucky enough to have one of those conversations with someone who who just thought that was the end?
Everybody I watch with has, with every one of these shows, always scrubbed through to see what if there was one, because even though there's been more instances now of there not being one than there actually being one, we still all want it. We still all expect it. So no, I mean, like everybody I've talked to, like that's usually how the conversation starts, is that moment. But yeah, no, I mean it's very. Man, your feelings can change drastically based on this one.
Yeah, let me like Dale got a text from one of her coworkers being like, "Well, that Loki sucked. Like, I'm so sad." And then to which Dale's like, "I'm not sure how to respond to that." And I'm like, "Why don't you watch the credits? Is how you respond to that. That's how you respond." And then she got they got in touch with her the next day, and they're like, "Oh, thank God!" Like, and I don't think we're spoiling too much by saying that, but like, if you're one of those people who saw the 4th episode of Loki but didn't watch the credits, oh, thank God. is what should be said. And I've had other conversations with people who are like, where does it go from here? And I'm like, I mean, I know exactly where it's probably going to go from here, based on what's been presented.
Right, exactly, yeah. But that's a weird conversation to have, because that sounds like you're asking, like, what is this show going to do? Like, it's going to lose me now. And it's like, you've made it 4 episodes out of 6. Like,
yeah,
like where does it go? It goes to the end.
like you also need to be like kind of smart enough to be like, what do you mean? Where does it go from here? And then they have to tell you, well, now that this happened, or now that this has occurred. And you're like, oh, okay. Well, you didn't watch the credits. So maybe watch the credits and then we can have a discussion. Maybe you'll feel a little better about where the show can go from here. And it's going to go 2 more episodes. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. I mean, like, you know, and you could still ask that question for sure.
Oh, yeah. You can ask that at any time.
It's just, it's a much different conversation if you don't.
It was
see
a
that
weird,
literal, like, 30 seconds of film.
I was very happy that Dale had to deal with somebody who didn't watch it, so that I was able to, like, upgrade and modify myself when I went to my first, like, barbecue post Pando, like, so I can be, like, ready to have these discussions with people. And I'm very excited, very, very excited. And I will say, because I'll be that person, where it's going to go from here, the entire MCU, is probably Young Avengers.
Well, right, and that was always kind of the thought, because they're introducing Miss Marvel at the end of this year somehow, whether it's a show or in the Marvels. We're also gonna get Kate Bishop, right? Like we're gonna have so many of those characters.
Well, we've already had Wiccan and Speedster,
which we thought were gone, but that now there's like rumors that due to what Scarlet Witch there, what's her name, is up to, what Wanda's up to, that they may not be gone forever too, for sure. Yeah,
right, but it's also 2 other ones. Isaiah Bradley's grandson is Patriot. Based on his name, he has the same name as Patriot.
I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah. And then you also got to consider the fact that Sylvie is Lady Loki from Young Avengers.
Right.
So, like, it's a lot going on. And then also, what happens in the end credit scene is another nod to Young Avengers. So, with just all of the Young Avenger stuff that we've seen, it feels like it's going to be less, that's a cute Easter egg, and more a path that the MCU is taking in some way.
Yep.
And I'm excited. I'm here for it. I like the Young Avenger stuff. You know what? Also, if the rumors are true and Kang the Conqueror is going to be the villain in Quantumania with Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Yeah.
Like you're almost begging them and daring them to do Young Avengers, aren't you? Like,
yeah, I know. Yeah, man. I will, and so to kind of swing back to the 4-episode thing.
Yeah.
I also think that what's really interesting about Loki specifically, that we'll have to talk more about once we know where it's going, is that the ways in which Loki uses the 4-episode like structure is it threw everything out.
Yeah.
Like it more than any show I've ever seen has completely wiped the slate for the last 2 episodes.
Which is very interesting. Like, it is, if WandaVision was daring you with, like, will you watch 4 episodes? Loki is like, will you keep watching after these 4 episodes?
Yeah.
It's not a question of if you'll watch the 4. It's a question of, have we given you enough breadcrumbs that you want to go deeper into the forest?
You're right. Yeah. It's very wild, and like there's so much going on in the show that I definitely want to talk about. So many references to things outside of Marvel, and there's so much that clearly somebody at Disney Marvel has really learned that they don't exist in a bubble, which is nice, because I think maybe that might be something else that you could say about Winter Soldier, Falcon and Winter Soldier, and WandaVision, is that they still very much felt like they were in the bubble of the Marvel Disney universe, like cute references to things outside, but still never really straying too far out of like the known like universes of right Marvel and Disney and stuff like that. This Loki has gone places that have been so new and so wild and so cool.
But also so satisfying
Oh yes,
if
yeah.
all you know is the Disney Marvel bubble.
Hmm.
So, well, I mean, again, that's another one. I feel like this is like sort of a trailer episode for other things to discuss.
Yeah.
Um, but also to put a stopper into the 4 episode thing, I finally watched the 4th episode of Rebel. The Katie, I can't think of her last name now. Leela. Who does Leela's voice? Katie
Oh yeah.
Seagal.
Katie Seagal. Yep.
The Katie Seagal led Erin Brockovich adaptation of her
Hmm.
life today, which is written before every episode. And I hate Rebel. America hates Rebel. It's not getting a second season. It was canceled after 10, and it will be wiped from Hulu in the next 10 days. But I will say, if I said I'd give it 4 episodes, and they got me. They hooked me with how they ended the 4th episode. And
Oh
I'm
man.
kind of mad at them for that. I'm not going to lie. It's sort of like, well, fuck you too, very
Yeah.
much. If I hadn't met Aaron Brockovich in real life, oh, we'd be having words, Rebel.
Oh man, fucking wild.
Yeah, but it's
I
crazy.
can't. I think that in reference to your idea that this is a bit of like a things to come episode, I think it's just that we're at that time of the year, right? Like we're literally sitting here like 3 or 4 days before the next Marvel movie finally comes out in theaters, right? Like
Yeah.
Black Widow this week is going to be, I think for me, has been kind of this line in the sand of things finally getting back to like here and now. Everything for the last year and a half, more than that now, has been, you know, well, we have to put everything on hold until the future. Like we have to stop what we're doing. We have to think about where we're gonna be. But until we're there, we're gonna just have to kind of keep focusing on that. So much has just been just a whirlwind and a blur. And every conversation has always been when things get back to normal, or when the new normal comes around, or once we're all able to touch each other again, once we're all able to hang out again. And it's like slowly over the last month or two, I've been breaking out and doing more and more stuff, but something has kind of still felt like we're still in that just kind of risk position. And there's something about this coming weekend that makes me feel like personally it's going to be like a breakthrough moment of I'm suddenly going to be able to start talking about real life in terms of right now as opposed to in the future. And so this is just kind of, I think this is just the kind of the anticipation and tail end of just the last year and a half. Is we've hit a point where we're no longer talking about things ethereally as if they happen, but we now have a lot of dates for when they will happen. And then from that, they're starting to then happen. So we're starting to actually run into things happening for us to talk about again.
I mean, the big thing is July 4th, the America's birthday, for all intents and purposes, is the halftime of the year. It is the time to look back at everything that you've done and look forward to everything that you're going to do. So we're literally recording this still in the aura, and I would have said the corona before, but the aura of July 4th.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think you're not wrong. And I'm going to ask now, I'm going to establish, I'm seeing Black Widow, right? Are you going to try to see Black Widow next weekend?
So my hope is that it's going to be the first movie, and I'm going to see it this weekend. But my hope is that it's going to be the first movie that I get to go back to my beer and movie like hangout joint. There's a place out here called Broovies, which I've probably talked about before. Yep. They were the good ones that got all wrapped up in the Deadpool penis like X rating thing,
Yeah.
where like Utah tried to stop them from showing the movie because there was a flaccid penis in it, and then Ryan Reynolds straight up like came to town to like defend the movie and all that shit. And Broovies won that fight, by the way, which is another reason why they're huge out here, is that they actually did win like the right to be able to show Deadpool on a movie screen. The issue was specifically because they also show alcohol, that basically the state of Utah was then saying, well, now you're a porno, like like because you can't show male nudity specifically, because they'd never had this issue with any female nudity in any film ever, but you can't show male nudity on screen and serve alcohol. That makes you a porn house. And Broovies was like, excuse me. So I have been waiting for like the reason to go back to Broovies. They shut down like hardcore with COVID, and they finally opened up last week for Fast 9. That was like their big like comeback movie. But I wanted to wait specifically for Black Widow. So yeah, I'm super excited because there's a lot of stuff wrapped up in seeing it.
Yeah. All right, cool. So, I mean, I think trailers and teases for next week, we're probably going to talk about Black Widow. So look forward to that.
Yeah,
or,
there's
like
there's already, I was talking to somebody about Black Widow who for some reason had gotten the impression that David Harbour was the villain in the movie. Like they were like, yeah, it's gonna be really weird seeing David Harbour as a villain, and I was like, I don't think he's the villain in that movie. And I had to like look into it to double check myself, because to be honest, I have not looked in on Black Widow with so much, and I was like, no, it's Taskmaster for sure, and he's not Taskmaster. And then I realized they haven't even announced who's technically playing Taskmaster. Like they may be in the credits list on IMDb, they're just not labeled that way, and that is so fucking rad that they have been able to keep that secret from me.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
so, like, I'm so excited. Yeah, there's gonna be a bunch
it's not crazy for someone to think that David Harbour as Red Guardian would be a villain, though, considering what Red Guardian is in the comics. Like,
Yeah.
The cool thing about Black Widow is that it is borrowing from so much that exists comic-wise.
Well, right, and that's why I had to check myself, because
Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute, did I misunderstand something? Because I was under the impression he was going to be like a jolly father figure character, and he could still,
he was to Natasha and
Right.
Yelena in a bunch of books. That doesn't change the fact that he was aligned he's more aligned as a villain than as a non-villain in the comics.
Right. Like I said, the movie could still also pull a fast one. There's no reason why he couldn't also be. It's just not what I was. Yeah, I can't believe how intrigued I am in this movie all of a sudden after a year of like not really wanting to think about it. I'm excited. Yeah.
Cool. I'm going to use David Harbour as the jumping off point.
Sure.
To talk about No Sudden Move.
Oh man.
Which,
okay.
like, obviously on this show, Brendan Fraser is the reason why I watched No Sudden Move the day it released on HBO Max. But
Nice.
David Harbour is also there. And I think my favorite moment of that whole movie was when he was on screen and my mother goes, "Is that John Hamm?" Because John Hamm is also in No Sudden Move. And I'm like, no, that's not John Hamm. I mean, it's hilarious. I'm going to remember this moment and
David
probably
Harbour
tell other
somewhere,
people.
But yeah. Oh man.
But No Sudden Move, very, very good. It's probably going to get a full episode eventually come some May.
Well, yeah, we're also going to have to talk a little bit about it in the coming weeks, because there's no way we're not talking about Space Jam: New Legacy. So talking about the Don Cheadle double
whammy in July.
HBO. Yeah. So we're gonna definitely be talking at least about Don Cheadle in the next couple of weeks here.
But No Sudden Move is really, really good. If you're on the fence about it, perfect Steven Soderbergh type nonsense, and Brendan Fraser's there, which my father finally shut up about. I think he's been blacklisted and Me Too'd when Brendan Fraser was in the movie. It turned into a lot of, Brendan Fraser looks kind of rough, huh? And I'm like, yeah, this is fun too, I guess. Like which devil do I want to deal with? Brendan Fraser is the sexual assaulter when he was the one sexually assaulted, or Brendan Fraser, he kind of let himself go.
Yeah, Brendan Fraser, late stage Brendan Fraser, who has admittedly not in the same shape he was when he was in The Mummy, means nothing. He's still acting, and he's still good acting.
Yeah.
All this is evidence that it wasn't ever just about his abs.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. It was fun seeing just how quickly, via the microcosm that is Dennis Decker, how quickly like the American perception of someone shifts. was fun, and I was very excited about it. So definitely check it out. No Sudden Move is very good, and also turns out there's a lot of Brendan Fraser fans out there on the Twitter because I tweeted about it because I'm doing, like I felt bad when I took on the 100 movie 12-month challenge. 12-month 100 movie challenge is the one that I took on because like someone challenged me to do it, and I'm like, hey, like I feel like I'm way out of the league of this challenge. And they're like, how so? And I'm like, well, I've done 365 movies in 365 days.
I was gonna say that's less than 10 movies a month.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's just does on a normal basis.
Yeah, and I'm like, and also I did 200 new movies in cinema once. So like, if you want me to still participate, I'd love to. I'd love to try to watch 100 new movies over the next 12 months. And thinking that we didn't know how long the lockdown was still going to go on back in January when I was challenged. And he's like, no, you're completely fine. I'm like, cool. I just wanted to make sure you knew that because like, I'm not fucking around when it comes to movies.
Yeah.
And I hit 50, and my 50, I think it was my 51st movie was No Sudden Move. And a lot of Brendan Fraser fans just came out of the woodwork to comment on what I wrote about it. And I'm like, well, that's nice. They're out there. We're not the only ones.
You got to hit them back up and be like, hey, we dedicate a whole month every year.
Oh, don't worry. I know how to manage it. Like, that was the thing. I wrote, I'm like, I dedicate every May to Brendan Fraser. How was I not watching No Sudden Move the day it was available? And then a lot of questions like, oh, you do? How so, Mr. Dego? Like,
yeah.
So that was awesome. No Sudden Move was awesome. I also saw Gentlemen Prefer Blondes for the first time. That was our Saturday movie classic.
Hell yeah, man. I love this. I love listening to you revisiting old cinema with me because like this was like every day of my goddamn life growing up with my dad watching these older movies on TCM and AMC when they first started. Now, no knock against AMC, but every day is a Walking Dead marathon nowadays. But yeah, man, like, so what'd you think?
Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it. Dale was the only one of the group who had already seen it. So it was really fun watching it with my father and mother. I mean, both of them were not born when it released. So it's not...
Yeah, but did Dale just watch it on a whim one day? Or what?
No, she watched it in one of her film courses. I mean, Dale's the film studies major.
Well, right. I just didn't want to assume that the only reason she was watching movies was because somebody told her to. But
no, that's why. She took a Marilyn Monroe class, I'm pretty sure. That was related to that type of stuff. And I think it was because she got to see Some Like It Hot in theaters for whatever anniversary it was. Maybe the 40th, I feel like, is at the time.
I heard a fucking rad piece of trivia that I had never considered before the other day. But can you name the similarities between Some Like It Hot, Tenet, Fight Club, and what was the last one? I can't remember the last one, but those three alone should be able to give it to you. Can you name the big like connecting tissue between those movies?
I have no idea.
All characters, all of those main characters are unnamed. Marilyn Monroe goes by the girl in Some Like It Hot, and then in Fight Club, he's the only time you get a reference to him is he calls himself Jack through the poems, but that's not his writing, so there's no name there. And then in Tenet, the main character is just called the protagonist by the end of the film. He's never given a name.
Well, let me tell you something crazy. I haven't seen any of those three movies. You just want to talk about it. I really want to watch Tenet. I have been waiting for me to have a movie pick with the family that hasn't had to been like sacrificed to the maw of an HBO Max premiere.
Yeah.
Because I'm not missing them. I'm not gonna watch the free movies that are coming to HBO Max and theaters. It just feels like I'm leaving money on the table. For sure. And if I'm the only one who's going to pick these ones, then I will gladly sacrifice myself. But as soon as I don't have to, oh buddy, we watching Tenet. Yeah.
I will warn you that the joke then by Jimmy Carr right after giving that trivia out, he then said, yeah, in Tenet, he's named the protagonist, just more evidence that Nolan never finished writing that film.
That's a pretty solid one. Thank you, Jimmy Carr.
Shit, Jimmy Carr. Fuck. Tell us how you really feel.
I mean, to be fair, he's probably just reading a card. It's someone in the writing staff.
Well, oh yeah, no, I'm sure Jimmy Carr doesn't know how to write a joke. You're right.
No. I'm talking that. I imagine it was one of the big fat quizzes that this is from. It's not just Jimmy Carr who's coming up with those. He's just the perfect mouthpiece for it. Yeah. So it was somebody else who had a problem. Maybe it was Jimmy Carr. I want to believe
I'm sure
it.
He is also part of the writing team for that show. He doesn't just get on up there and just read whatever the fuck he wants.
He's just so very busy, Jimmy Carr. I don't know if he has time to do that, or if he's just willing to be affable for the quizzes. So Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, fantastic. I think the best part is Jane Russell. Sorry, Marilyn Monroe, but Dorothy Shaw is the best. Jane Russell's character is so fantastic, and even Jane Russell is I mean, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, everybody thinks of the iconic Diamonds Are a Girl Best Friend performance with her in the fuchsia velvet gown, Marilyn Monroe, and then Jane Russell does the song too, and I'm like, I really like Jane Russell's performance better. I don't want to be a jerk about it, but hers felt more kinetic and fun, as she kind of felt this whole movie.
You talk about that scene, and that scene is so iconic, though. Her doing Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. I mean, I've been watching, for some reason, multiple times over the last few months, have watched Moulin Rouge. I mean, I love that movie, so I'm not disappointed. I just don't know why suddenly in my life it's come up 2 or 3 times. But the other thing I think of is Margot Robbie as Harley in Birds of Prey has that whole Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend moment that is so fucked up and crazy. Yeah. But Jane Russell as Dorothy Shaw in that movie, having to stand up against the celebrity force that is Marilyn Monroe at that time was not a enviable task.
No. Though apparently they were best friends despite gossip columnists and even a trailer for the film trying to say that they hated each other, that they were so contentious on set. And then, no, we were best friends. Why would we be contentious on set?
The Hollywood machine has always sucked.
There's your proof there. Luca. I checked out Luca.
Yeah, checked that out myself this weekend, man. What'd you think?
I fucking loved it. It was awesome.
I remember at the end of that movie turning to, I was watching it online with a friend, and so I turned to my computer screen after watching it, and I was just like, man, that movie was gorgeous, but it was buck fucking wild. The story and the ways in which it lays out kind of its lore are so background to just some of the gorgeous shots and some of the beautiful character work in that film that it was so I finally understand why Disney didn't know how to tell anybody about it, because it's really it's an experience more than it is a story. And so I encourage anybody to check it out, because it was so good and so beautiful, but I right here can't even begin to explain to you the stakes of that film. They're not really huge. It's not world ending and they are in some other Pixar films,
Yeah, I mean, I think I can best sum up that movie by my mother's incredulous, "Why is Jim Gaffigan the father?" And I'm just that's weird. And she said it let's say there were 10 minutes left in the movie, and it was just "Why is Jim Gaffigan the father?" And I'm just that's your problem with the movie, huh? That's your only problem with this movie? And she's yeah, that's really it. And I'm well, then they did a good job, right? You can't deny that they didn't. They did a good job.
I didn't even realize that was a thing, nor does it bother me.
No, I know, it does. It was just so funny how just out of nowhere, in one moment of quiet, and I think you know the one that I'm talking of. It was just "Why is Jim Gaffigan the father?"
Yeah, there's so much in that movie that's so beautiful. There's an entire third act scene in the rain that I think might be some of the best animation that Pixar has done in a long time. And this is, I mean, you heard me praise the artistic just experimentation going on in Soul, and I love that, and I think that they need to keep pushing that for sure. But as far as like rubber meets the road, hardcore, let's animate a scene with people in the rain. Like they have never done anything better
Yeah,
than
they
that. Yeah.
it felt so real.
Yeah.
Everything felt real.
Yeah.
Even like right down to like the smallest character choices. Like
Hmm.
there was one character choice right near the end of it. And again, I don't want to ruin this one because it's available right now on Disney Plus if you have it. There's
Yeah.
no cost but that subscription cost to see it, and it's worth seeing. And also, it is one of those things that's kind of difficult to describe. But there was this small, stupid character choice near like right before the break into 3
Hmm.
that broke me. That like I'm like, oh my god, this movie has me. This movie could do whatever it wants to me
Yeah.
because of that stupid thing that they just did.
Yeah.
Um, and they did. I'm about to cry right now just living in it again.
Yeah,
So
and the relationship between Luca and Alberto, the two main boys of the film, is something that is so rarely seen in movies nowadays. It's this beautiful, like, they're not brothers, that but there's clearly like a love between the two of them that is just so it was so cool to see this kind of male relationship on screen in a way that like just isn't done anymore. And part of that is probably because there's going to be inherent reads of this film that people are going to talk about there being some homosexuality on screen and some binary stuff on screen, and those reads are definitely valid. There's plenty of people out there doing them. I'm not the person to make that read on this film, so instead I'm just sitting there as somebody that like has a little brother, has you as a friend, like I'm thinking about all of these relationships in my life that we have so constantly talked about, how just like male love on screen is just never celebrated or shown. And like, read it any way you want, the fact that it's there is just so rare that I love it. It was fascinating.
yeah.
I felt the same way about kind of the relationship in Onward. It's just that they are established brothers. So like that relationship on screen was also very unique beginning of last year, and I loved that too. But this is something else entirely.
Well, I
Yeah,
mean,
so
where
good.
Onward really spoke to me is the age difference between them, because
Right.
it's so rare to see that, and like that's the sibling like friendship that I have is
Hmm.
this huge age difference between Dale and I. So it was cool to finally kind of see that represented somewhere. I really dug that in Onward.
Yeah.
But, and this was not me, but I will say it is a thought that passed through my head. Someone did refer to Luca as calamari me by your name.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, that's so good. And I'm also kind of sad that like I thought about Call Me by Your Name while I watched this film.
No, like I
That
said,
like
the read is definitely
yeah,
there, and like I said, it's not necessarily going to be my place to say one way or the other whether or not that's like an inappropriate read. It's just the fact that it can be read that way, and the fact that there is this relationship on screen that we're just is so rare to us that to see two boys on screen that care about each other so much, like it in some ways a lot of people feel like it has to be that, because what else can it be, is it's just the fact that they are willing to do that in a kids movie nowadays in 2021, and not answer any question one way or the other is amazing. Like it's so refreshing to see that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I just hope my only hope is that much like my own fears and the fears of the people at Pixar, the fact that the Pixar stuff is going straight to Disney Plus without any sort of paywall is not indicative of how Disney feels about what they are producing.
No, yeah,
Because
I feel
Onward,
like,
Soul, and Luca
yeah.
feels like a completely new step forward in the storytelling and visual world building.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I would say that if I have gotten the impression that the Pixar ones being the free day one, in theaters and on the app move, was a choice by Pixar saying these are movies for everybody. We are not going to put that extra paywall in the way of people seeing these films. And like, you still need to pay for the app, you still need to pay for the movie ticket to go see them, because art still needs to be supported. But the idea that they are not going to then on top of everything tack on that extra $30 for you to watch them, I feel like that is a move by Pixar to say like, no, these are movies that we want people people to see. We are not going to put that barrier for entry in front of them. Could be wrong. Like you could be right that maybe this is Disney saying like we're going to second tier these films compared to our own. But I never got the impression that.
Well, I think that second tiering would end up working against them based on everything I've seen and everything that I've heard. Because being able to see it, people are talking about Luca. I've had discussions about Luca. Raya and the Last Dragon, usually when I brought that one up, it was, oh, I didn't see it, I didn't want to pay. I'm like, oh, it's available now. And they're like, oh. And then it moves on from there.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, like, but you talk about, like, oh, I finally watched Luca. Oh, I watched Luca too. And then a discussion happens. And that's better. People talking about your movie is more important in a weird way. But I mean, I think the thing about Luca, and I didn't know this, is it didn't get a theatrical release. It is straight to Disney Plus exclusive.
Oh, really?
And that is
news to me.
So that was hearing from Pixar people saying that, like, when they decided that it was just going to Disney Plus, that was when we wondered where we stood. And I certainly hope that everybody that I've talked to about it, and just my own feelings about Luca, that you're right, that Disney is just like, we want to make sure everybody can see these. And it is a draw to the platform of Disney Plus, something unique, but theatrically budgeted and provided that way.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I mean, and the Monsters at Work show that premieres this week, and I don't know how to feel about it.
I'm excited to watch it. I think it's going to be fun. The thing is like Disney doing the show spun out from the world of their films is nothing new. They've done that forever. So like it feels like it's an experiment for Pixar to be doing something that has worked so long for Disney, but hopefully with a little bit of that Pixar magic in it. Hopefully it's not soulless like some of the other straight to TV Disney shows have been. I say that, but some of the best TV Disney shows have been like Tangled, and the ways in which they built up that world in the Tangled show are phenomenal. But there's always that risk that it's just there to create toys. So we'll see what happens with that for sure.
I think for that one it's two-pronged for me. On the one hand, I really hope it means that Buzz Lightyear of Star Command is finally brought to Disney Plus, because that's the only other Pixar thing that ever got like developed into a full show, and that was so good. I still can't get over some of the episodes of Buzz Lightyear of Star Command that I have watched, just in terms of what they presented and what was for children.
And the animated movie, I was actually just reading a whole article a couple of weeks ago about the replacement of Tim Allen in the animated film with Patrick Warburton, and the ways in which like Patrick Warburton, the differences he brings to the character, and then like there's a lot of debate about whether or not, because I guess it originally premiered with the Tim Allen version. I don't know. People were talking about it as if they had seen the Tim Allen version, and I've only ever seen the Patrick Warburton cartoon show and the Patrick Warburton voicing the VHS movie that I have a copy of. I don't know if that was ever on TV or what, but like, but people talking about Tim Allen's version being superior for A, B, and C reasons, and I was like, I didn't know they ever actually released Tim Allen doing the actual voice work. As far as I knew, like there were a couple of snippets from like a preview, but then other than that, like they brought Warburton in to be like, no, this character needs to actually be fun.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, when someone says the Tim Allen version, I think they just mean his Buzz Lightyear in the Toy Story movies, because that has been Patrick Warburton up and down, and Pixar also was very like upfront and forward about the fact that the reason why Buzz Lightyear sounds the way he does on the show is because that is the show that would be airing for Andy to watch and care about the character of Buzz Lightyear. It's why Andy would want a toy of him, is that show.
And to that point, the casting of Chris Pine in the new Buzz Lightyear movie, it being the idea that this is a movie version of that show that would have come out in that universe. This is not Buzz Lightyear, the toy, goes to space. This is the character of Buzz Lightyear in a film, right? And so like, so when people were just like, why isn't it Tim Allen, and Tim Allen doing his thing where he's just like, yeah, I'm hot for a second on Twitter, let me talk about how this is a shit decision, and it's just like, calm down, man. Like the idea that you as an artist can't ever like help other artists. Like you always have to be out there talking about why you are the one that deserves shit and nobody else does. Is just like it just doesn't make sense for you to be the voice of this character.
Yeah, it exactly. It's one of those things also where like that always added another level of like enjoyment for me because those first run like quick to store shelf toys are always sort of based on production models or just what the toy company knows, and then you finally get a revision that is proper.
Right.
So like if he gets a first run Buzz Lightyear toy, it's just some schmuck in the toy factory who's doing the voice. It's not going to be licensed vocal lines yet.
Yeah, right.
And it just seems so, and it also speaks to another weird thing in the whole Toy Story universe is the fact that like Woody sounds like Woody, right?
Yeah.
And it's just this whole talk of like how the technology of toys, even as they have gotten better, right? There's still some downplay in the actual quality of its representation. And it's fascinating to me. And I'm sorry. I've gone off.
I mean, like,
yeah.
There's this conversation here is the kind of conversation that I feel is so much easier for me to have with Pixar movies versus talking about like Disney animated. Like there's the Disney animated feature films are great, and there's some phenomenal ones and there's some so ones, but altogether, like I would watch any of those over one of these like dime store like Norm of the North style quick to put out, oh, this animation's not finished films that you see all the fucking time. Like it's what elevates Disney above those other animation houses, right? And then Pixar, for me, you get that extra step of there is so much care and thought and everything put behind every decision that they make that you never feel like they never seem like they are tied to a financial like need to like push a movie out in order to survive to make the next movie. And like with Disney, you feel like that sometimes, and you know that feeling is hollow because they're backed by goddamn Disney. So there was no reason for a Disney film to be rushed out into theaters other than they want to make that bank. And you feel that from time to time with some of their releases where you're like, well, this got finished because it was being worked on for too long and costing too much cash. Like, and I never feel that way with any of these Pixar movies. And Luca is such a great example of that because it is just so far out of the realm of marketable children's film that like I'm excited to see how it does and how people talk about it, because it's just it was such a bizarre experience, like watching this movie and being like, I love this and I don't know how to talk about it with anybody.
I mean, you want to talk about just the bad marketing on Luca's behalf. I was convinced that Luca and Alberto were swapped. I thought Alberto was Luca based on the small amount of marketing that I saw.
Yeah,
because he was so like forward in all of the promos and stuff. Because I wouldn't listen to it, but like he was the driving force in every like commercial I saw.
Right.
And I'm just like, oh, so that must be Luca, right?
Right.
And no, that's not Luca. Spoilers.
Yeah. As we speak, I'm sitting here looking at a McDonald's Happy Meal toy that I got a week ago before the movie came out, and it is Alberto that I got. I did not get Luca.
Yeah.
So like you would be forgiven if all you saw was a couple of the toys and the one preview I think they put out, and being like, yeah, this story is about this older boy who wants to get away, and it's like, no, it's not. That's not. I mean, like that's part of the story, but that's the thing, is the story. This is a story told in so many parts that like they all come together in this beautiful way. Yeah.
And then to tie up the bow about Monsters at Work, a follow-up, like a proper follow-up to Monsters Incorporated, is something that I have wanted since I left the theater seeing Monsters Incorporated. So like the level of desire and hype and expectation that I feel like it's untemperable, considering it's been growing inside of me for so long.
Yeah, man. Don't set yourself up for failure. like
right. That's what I'm saying. It's just definitely a thing that like I am aware of. I am very aware of.
Yeah, man. So I got out to the theaters last week to do my actual official first like back to cinemas.
Ooh, okay.
Back in Sundance of last year, Edgar Wright had a documentary film in it called The Sparks Brothers, all about the bizarre and beautiful history of the brothers Sparks, that created a musical group in the late 70s and has evolved and kept that musical group going up to releasing an album just last year in the middle of COVID. And they're still releasing. They're working on their next album. But he wanted to follow this group's history and just kind of get the story out there because the continual like oeuvre of Sparks has always been that they have been too good too soon. So they come out with an album. So for instance, in 79, I believe, they put out a completely electronic album using all types of electronic equipment that they've found in like a studio space somewhere. And it hit really big, but the problem was it wasn't going to be 2 or 3 years until electronic music really kind of hit in the 80s. So like it was really popular for when it came out, but then by the time they made their second album in like in that style, then they were already like everybody was like, oh, Sparks are just doing electronic music, and like everybody was like, well, they did electronic music on the last album. Y'all just missed it because you weren't paying attention. So they actually kind of led the way for a bunch of these artists to do it. And the documentary is really interesting because what Wright does is he talks to people, like he talks to musicians, he talks to comedians, he talks to filmmakers, he talks to all of these people that loved Sparks and love Sparks to this day and watch what they do and say like, well, yeah, like then people gave us like he talks to Flea and like Flea is like, yeah, and then Red Hot Chili Peppers like we it inspired us to do this style of music that is like unnameable, and like everybody out there says like, oh, you guys have such an undefined sound, and he's like, yeah, it is undefined, but if you go back and listen to these Sparks albums which really inspired us, you'd actually realize what we were doing was just kind of evolving off of that. But the problem is that everybody seems to always miss the Sparks album that really kind of kicks off a genre. And the thing is for the brothers Sparks is like they don't care. They're just they just fucking work. They have put out, I believe the number by the time the movie came out was 25 albums, and it's close to 300 songs. And that is insane, and the fact that they are still working and still putting albums out is crazy. And so they don't care. They put an album out every 2 or 3 years, and it either rocks and they make enough money to make the next album, or it falls apart and they kind of have to like tone it down. Like spoke to a lot of old musicians that had worked with them, but like they were like, yeah, they had to let us go, they had to fire us because the second album just didn't hit and they didn't know what to do with themselves. So they fired us, locked themselves up in a hotel room for 2 years, and then came out with a new album that was a completely different sound and a completely different genre. And it was amazing to listen to these other musicians that had worked with them be like, yeah, like I always wanted to be in their band and I got to be for an album or two, and then they had to let us go because things weren't working out. And then next thing I know, they're putting out another album that hits big for them. And like part of that sucks because I wanted to be there for that, but the other part of it is like I just love that they're able to keep working. And that is kind of like the attitude that they kind of push for just 30 years. So Edgar Wright is like, I got to make a movie about these guys. Like this is unacceptable to me that more people are not listening to these guys and not paying attention to what these guys are doing. They're just really weird in their like stage presence. Their choice of how to make albums is crazy. Like the music that they want to put out is consistently like clearly just for them, and it's just cool that other people have been able to get in on it, but like they never have kowtowed to any sense of like populism, despite the fact that they acknowledge that what they are making is pop music. Like they're like, yeah, we're making music that is meant to be sold, it's just we're not paying attention to anything that they had producers come and say to them like, your sound might be do better if you go this way with it, and they're like, that's cool, but we're not going to do that, and then they would go off in the other direction. And like, and it's just it was just insane to see this documentary and watch Wright goes through all 25 albums and talks about like what worked for this one, what didn't work for that one, how they moved into this one, how they evolved into that, how this artist was affected in this way, how this comedian was affected in this way, how this musician 20 years down the line didn't understand that what they were doing was actually inspired by an artist that was inspired by an artist that was inspired by Sparks, and how like you had guys that would play with them on stage and be like, you guys have a really rad sound, you know, you should make an album. And they'd look around and be like, we have 18 albums out right now, guys. Like this isn't new. This isn't new to us. And it was just a phenomenal documentary, and it hit really big at Sundance. And then like I didn't even know Edgar Wright was actually part of it. I had just heard about the movie itself, and that we couldn't get into it. Like the tickets went instantly. Now that I know it was an Edgar Wright film, I understand why. And then like everybody coming out of the theater talking about how good it was. And then like all Sundance movies, it disappears for a while, because what happens is they go into negotiations with studios. They maybe get released, maybe they don't. And if they do get released nowadays, it could be on, you know, a streaming service on the back end that you never hear about. Like Amazon loves to pick up stuff from Sundance and then just kind of, you know, it's up there for Prime if you want it, but they don't do any advertising for it. And it's just like, that doesn't help me as a movie lover. Like I can never find these movies again. But all of a sudden we heard like a month ago that it was getting an actual theatrical release. And we were like, that's fucking great. Like, that's wild. We'll get to actually see this movie. So we were kind of just banking on it. You know, like we were like, maybe by the time this movie comes out, like we'll be able to go back to theaters. We'll all be, you know, up to snuff with our vaccines and stuff. And sure enough, we were. And then we went to go look and buy tickets. And it was in one of those beautiful Utah cinemas that I just love out here, where all of the seats are giant ass lazy boys that like electronically like kick back with the seats up. Everything is assigned seating, so you can pick exactly where your seats are. And with COVID, they're still following COVID rules, so they're also making sure that for every seat you buy, there's a seat on either side of you that is spaced out. Like they won't sell that seat, right? So we weren't sitting near anybody. We were just in the back row, and it was a phenomenal back to the cinemas experience, because in addition to watching just this crazy ass documentary that is gorgeous, by the way, and people are talking like it being like Oscar like rumblings, because it's the first like real documentary this year that's really hit, and the ways in which it plays with like animation styles and humor and all of this stuff is pretty wild. But the whole experience was just great, because like literally like spent more money on popcorn and candy and soda, which I've never done before. But it was just this idea of just being like, you know what, we're here, I'm doing the whole shebang. Like I sat back, watched this movie, and just had such a good time with it. So like all around, it was just a phenomenal like movie night experience.
Awesome. That's awesome. I'm a little jealous. And also, if you went and saw the height of cinema that is available right now, I spent my 4th of July in the dregs.
Oh dear. Oh no. What did you do?
I watched America the Motion Picture.
Oh man, the like animated Netflix one that came out?
Yeah, that
with like
is
Channing Tatum, right?
Yeah, it's Lord and Miller is what I'm gonna lead with. You lead with Channing Tatum. It's Chris Miller and Phil Lord.
Yeah.
And I think my initial thought is I'm now nervous about the Clone High reboot.
Okay, all right.
Because it's a lot of R-rated humor. And I know that sounds weird, but then talking to somebody about it, they're like, yeah, it was too edgy for me, and I ended up shutting it off. And yeah, that was kind of a shame, because Lord and Miller, like,
feeling that was kind of more the point than anything else, was to make an edgy America film. And you know, that's a genre, that's a type. So like I like you know, it's a kind of very underground like genre that is out there that has existed for years. But I think of like a few years ago, the one that kind of hit a little big was Hell and Back, the claymation. Before that, you know, you always had like your South Park Bigger, Longer, Uncut. You had your all the way back to the 70s and 80s. You have Heavy Metal. Like you have those movies that are like, this is animation, but it's not for kids, is like kind of the place where they start, and then they decide to actually write a movie, and you're just like, oh, okay. Like you know, sometimes those movies hit really like nice though. Like I'm thinking of Wizards is a phenomenal piece of cinema, but it definitely plants its foot firmly in this is not a movie for kids, despite the fact we made it pretty and colorful. And it's like, nobody here thought it had to be for kids, man. Like, take a breath. Like,
yeah,
edgy for the sake of edgy is not necessary.
I think that's like where the issue is, with where like I struggled with it, is like, Yeah, it's adult animation. Like, that's what it's called. It's an adult animation. Like, so then you don't have to be like, oh my god, look at all this stuff. Because it's like, I've seen other edgy things already on Netflix. And, like, this is a whole thing now. Like, you guys aren't the first ones here. It's
Right.
just kind of the first time that you guys, and if I'm wrong about that, you let me know, are dipping a toe into this.
Yeah, the closest would probably be from my immediate like memory pull is Clone High,
Right.
which was always kind of edgier animated because it was the MTV era.
Yeah, but even then, like, I think what makes Clone High so special is that it's sort of that edgy, but there were clear rules that they had to, like, play in.
Well, and rules that they established for themselves.
Yeah.
It's not that it felt like somebody outside was constantly telling them to tone it down, a la like a South Park or something like that. It's just like they established for themselves that there was lines that they were not going to cross, and that if they ever got close to those lines, they were going to make a joke out of it and then dial back. I think of like the Marilyn Manson like very special episode where
Yeah.
like they allow him to kind of go off the chain for just a couple of moments, and then they pull it back and he's just this regular guy, and that's the joke, right? Is him going off the chain and then being leashed is funny.
Yeah. Ditto Tom Green.
Yeah,
Like, Tom Green being able to just talk and then they animate around that.
You're right.
is another very, like, it's new and it's different, but also you get that intelligence and that humor that has always sort of driven their product.
Right.
But like America the Motion Picture, now it's satire. Like, obviously it's satire. They're satirizing the idea of the bro action movie. Along the whole line of it. I mean, the final fight is so endgame. It's like fun, but there's the stuff between the beginning and the end
Yeah.
that, like, it's kind of like inconsistent plot stuff and things just sort of happening. The best part is, and this happens right in the beginning, Will Forte being Abraham Lincoln again. But, like, then it also just kind of feels like drunk history with the fact that Abraham Lincoln and George Washington are best friends.
Right. Yeah, there's no regard for time or place in it from the little that I know about it, right?
Yeah, and that's fine. Like, I get that that's what you're doing and that's the goal of it. It's just that that's a dangerous game to be playing. Because when you're on, you're going to be on. But if you ever slip off, it's a long way to fall.
Yeah, well, I mean, we talked about this kind of humor not too long ago with Paradise PD, right? Like,
Yeah.
dipping into that, and how for some reason why that show worked for us, but like something like Brickleberry just didn't. Like, and how that is, like you're saying, like there's a slippery slope there, and then the second that you slip down it, it's very hard to climb back up. And so it's a shame that it doesn't hit, but like I would say that doesn't give me any fear for any future projects that they're working on, because everybody inevitably has that moment where maybe things just don't click. And I haven't watched it yet because my intention is fully to just one night as I start to fall asleep and need something to like put in front of my eyeballs, like I will remember, oh right, this, and I will experience it, because that always seems to be the best way for me to experience these types of like too edgy for their own good style things. Is like I can't force myself to watch South Park anymore just because everybody else is watching it. I need to wait until I'm suddenly in the mood one day and bang through 10 episodes of it, because if I've pushed myself to watch it, I'm not gonna enjoy it. Like it's not a genre that lends itself to forced watching.
I get that. I mean, this was really like, it's the 4th of July. If I don't watch it now, I'm not going to watch it for a year.
Yeah,
So I
sure.
watched it last night when
moment,
everybody went to sleep. And also when I realized that there was no new Last Week Tonight.
Right.
I'm like, oh, even though John Oliver said, we'll see you next week, there's not a new episode tonight.
You lied to me, John.
I guess I'll watch this movie that I was interested in. And if I don't watch, I won't watch for a year.
Right.
And it is, and I will say there are moments in it that are on fire. Like, there's a moment right in the middle of the movie that felt so geared into the Clone High, Devin Decker, like, conflagration of comedy.
Yeah.
Like why I like that show is on screen again. It's just that, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm like, I don't think I could ever tell anybody to watch this film. I'm going to have to say to my mother and sister, who I'm like, do you guys want to watch this with me? And they're like, no, we're not interested. That they made the right decision. Like, I'm like that hat in hand moment. Well, you guys made the right decision. But yeah, I mean, a great cast. Jason Mantzoukas, Olivia Munn, Bobby Moynihan are other people who are in this film. Simon Pegg shows up. Andy Samberg, unrecognizable is the voice that he's doing. Like,
that's awesome.
Really, really good stuff there. But it, like with that edgy stuff, there's a reason why like an edgy 30-minute show, which is really 22 minutes, can work. It's when you go long form, you're just dancing with that line, and that line is a cliff in this particular genre.
Yeah, well, and that's what makes it so impressive when somebody can pull it off.
Yeah.
So like hearing that it doesn't quite work all the way through is disappointing, but also like I gotta be honest, not too surprising. I haven't heard anybody really touting it as like anything more than just something to put on to laugh at while you're high with your friends. And so like, I'm gonna treat it that way. I'm not gonna force myself to see it, but at some point I'm definitely gonna watch it. It's gonna happen. It's just probably gonna be one of those like 2 a.m. I can't sleep. What's something I can put in front of my eyeballs moments, Well,
I'm excited for that day when we can discuss it. But I guess the reason why I was like nervous about Clone High was I hope that they don't feel like they have to go this edgy with it, because the rules are what made that show funny.
Well, I would say the structure of Clone High doesn't merit that, right? The idea is that it was always supposed to be a play on those high school dramas, a la like
After School Special and
and like I'm thinking of Undressed that was on MTV at the same time as it, right? Like it was playing a lot on those same ideas. One Tree Hill was big at the time and stuff, right? So like to go too edgy is against the concept, and I have total faith in them to stick to a concept when they're doing it. And in fact, it's funny that you say that you feel like it goes too edgy and too far and it falls off and doesn't work, because in a lot of ways, like that genre, if you're going to satirize that genre, which is what I really feel like it's trying to do in a lot of ways, like you kind of have to do that. Now, obviously, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And then, criticize them as they should be criticized. But to hear that they go too far and it doesn't work for you in a weird way feels like that's kind of the joke in a lot of ways. And,
I mean, that's the thing. Like, that's why I lead with it's clearly satire. I get that you're satirizing what you guys are talking about.
Right.
But then, like, when the satire doesn't work, like, is that the best satire of all? No. That I feel the same way? Or should I be able to laugh at the things that don't work in other genres?
Yeah.
It was interesting. So, I mean, it's out there. Give it a try. But again, if you're not feeling it in the beginning, don't force yourself to keep watching it. It is very much a mood movie.
Yeah.
And I will say that. I mean, there's some great moments. They're there, but they're few and far between.
And I have to wonder, like, where we're going with that genre right now, because the other thing is that's a genre that very much lends itself to the whims of the time. So, like, to point to the king of this stuff is South Park, and they are noticeably facing a lot of kind of downwinds right now. Especially with the trans rights and sports episode that they did a few weeks ago, catching a lot of weird heat for whether or not it did or didn't do what it was purportedly trying to do. There's been a lot of stuff about like revisiting some things that they've done in the past, and I think it actually started a few years ago when they had to do a huge mea culpa on the Man Bear Pig stuff, and then like since then, like kind of admitting that some of their stuff from 20 years ago was fun and edgy and poignant then, but in retrospect we realize a lot of the damage that it did. I think of the conversation that we had where we talked about like Clerks, and and Dale's completely fair feeling that like, yeah, this might have been satire and it might have been him calling out these people, but what happened was that a bunch of people read the message wrong, and like it ended up breeding a ton of empowered, white filmmakers and online presence that like took that attitude and took it as the gospel truth, as opposed to the fact that like you don't want to be these guys, right? And the same thing goes for now South Park. Is like, in retrospect, like, you can say all you want that Eric Cartman is not supposed to be the character you idolize, but that doesn't change the fact that for 20 some odd years now, there have been certain groups of people in this country that do idolize him as like the voice of truth on that show. As much as you can make him look like the asshole, that doesn't change that some people don't see him as the asshole.
And I mean, you can say that he's not the people there. He's the character who shows up in everything else.
Right.
That voice and what that character stands for is, you see him in Basketball. And I know that's not them, but it's their acting. So when they improv and they do it,
it shows up there.
Yeah, it shows up there. Orgasmo, there is a Eric Cartman character. Kim Jong-un.
Yeah.
Like,
right, exactly. So I
you
wonder,
also know it works, guys.
Right, exactly. And so like I wonder where we're going with that genre, the edgy for the sake of edginess genre, because it's not going to go away. It never has. It never will. Anybody that wants it to end, I got bad news for you. Like, there's always going to be somebody out there that's trying to push the envelope just because somebody's supposed to be in this time. Like, who, and if not me, then who, is always going to be the attitude of those kinds of creators. And like, I, as somebody that grew up celebrating those kinds of artists, now in retrospect have to reconsider my fandoms in those areas. And like, I think I've made it pretty clear that I definitely land in the area of like, artists should be allowed to do what artists want to do, and they should then be rightly criticized if it's not working. So like, it's not that I feel like these people should stop making these kinds of films. It's not that I feel like Lord and Miller shouldn't have made this movie. I think the more important thing is that there needs to be a good, healthy dose of reality, of people pointing at it and saying, here's what's wrong with it now, so that the next guy that comes along to try and do it can do it a little bit better. And then, 20 years out from them doing it better, we'll look back and talk about how their thing was maybe not the healthiest. And it's going to be the kind of give and take of that cycle of art.
Right. And in fact, it's crazy. It is legitimately crazy. First of all, I just need to address a few weeks back with the trans sports episode of South Park. That episode is 2 years old. Like,
is it the one where she gets called out for?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was one that people were see. That shows how much I don't watch the
show.
I know
it shows how much you don't watch it, but it shows how little time means anything right now, because of just like 2020 didn't happen. Right?
Yeah, right.
Like, it's just like a big blip to be an asshole and use the Marvel word I didn't want to use there. But it is like, but you say that, and it's one of those situations where like, but one of the reasons why people are talking about that South Park episode is because they touched on something before it became such a discussion topic.
You're right.
Like, they were living in that world and saying this thing, and the way that because their show is able to comment so quickly on things, they were able to do that episode based on, I mean, that episode happened and I had just watched a short documentary about trans athletes' rights in Connecticut.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm like, oh wow, this is crazy how quick they got on this and produced an episode about it. And like, because it was so fresh, there were people who I tried to talk to about it, and they're like, where does that come from? And I'm like, oh, did you not hear? But like, of course you didn't hear. It's been going on for like a month.
Right.
It never even hit the national level until they talked about it. Sorry, not to get that. It's just that like, you being like a few weeks ago, and I'm like, oh, there hasn't been a new South Park since I think March.
Yeah, well, I guess what it is then is the more that people have been talking about it recently. I think because of a lot of the stuff that's been going on, it's just become a flashpoint of talking about like, the damage that a show like that can do when the point is missed. Because to their credit, like, the end of the episode is supposed to be that the character, the trans character there is accepted by the boys, because in true fashion for the main boys on that show, they never quite see, in their innocence, they never see the issue that some of the adults do, right? And so the idea is supposed to be that character is then accepted by them for who they are, because that's their whole oeuvre on that show. But does 2 seconds of accepting that character at the end of the episode make up for the 21 minutes beforehand
where the character is a joke? Yeah,
right. And like, and that's the conversation is you know, what is pulled from these shows and what is intended by these shows are, we're finding out more and more often, very different things. And so who's responsible for what the audience gets out of them? And I think that's an interesting conversation, and unfortunately a very dangerous one, because you end up with people that feel like, you know, not only do I believe artists are responsible for what is read in their work no matter what, I feel like we have to hold them accountable in a specific ways, and that gets real scary at some point. But on the other hand, like, if we don't hold somebody accountable for making this stuff accessible to people in gross ways, like, what are we doing? Like, we you know, it's an interesting conversation about that genre in particular that, as I said, we're never gonna solve it. Does that mean I think we should stop talking about it? God, no. Like, we should talk about it all the time, and people should be held accountable any chance we can get, because that's what shapes how we do this, how we move forward.
Exactly. And really, and the other thing is, it's crazy that Trey and Matt are still doing South Park, a show that they started in '96, is still talked about and created in 2021. Like, but then you also, so they can address those issues, but then you also see that same thing happening with Rick and Morty and their 5th season.
Yeah.
Like, right out of the gate, addressing the fact that Jessica was just an item. Like, she was just a plot device. And trying to fix that and move past it. And then the second episode trying to address other issues with just the toxicity of the fan base. It's been pretty impressive to watch how this 5th season feels like a mea culpa from Roiland and Harmon.
Well, and that's the thing, is you say just this 5th season, but they have always been very open. I mean, with Harmon, you can even go back to Community and the ways in which it addresses itself and addresses its own issues and calls itself out. And Harmon, as an artist, is always one of the first people to call himself out when an issue occurs. I mean, even in the Me Too stuff, as we've talked about, like, when he got called out rightly for the stuff that he did, his immediate response was one of apology, regret, and reflection, that a lot of other people did not take that path. And it's what made Harmon kind of come out the other side of that and still be this guy that we can still talk about and watch and experience, because we understand that he knows that he is a human still in need of correcting in a lot of ways. So, like, it does make Rick and Morty a really interesting show to watch. And I think for a lot of people, I mean, I can't believe we didn't think about Rick and Morty in this entire genre. Maybe this is why, it's what makes Rick and Morty the show that for some people, it's a show that just has always gone too far and it's not their bag, but it's never a show that has been called out as one that needs to disappear, because they are always the first people to call out their own toxicity and explore that. And so, like, in a weird way, maybe that's how we do this right, and maybe that's where Lord and Miller kind of fall on their face with this movie, is without seeing it, it sounds like it doesn't ever take the moment to really reflect on itself in the ways in which something like Rick and Morty does. And in 2021, that is how, to me, you do the toxic genre of edgy comedy, is that it has to be comedy that then reflects on itself at some point, and it can't just be the last 2 seconds of the episode, a la like a South Park now. It has to be built into the actual structure of the show itself.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, nothing exemplifies that in the fact that I watched America the Motion Picture, and then I followed that up by watching the new Rick and Morty. And, like, yeah, that exact thing that you're talking about is encapsulated in that 22 minutes, as opposed to the hour and a half I just watched in cinema form, where, like, that moment kind of never happened.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. It's something. And I mean, I specifically look at Rick and Morty because they have their flashpoint moment when people are losing their fucking minds in a McDonald's.
Yes. Yeah. Jesus. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even BTS didn't cause the uproar that Rick and Morty did with their sauce choices.
All right. Is there anything else that you want to add before we send this one off? I think we've touched on a lot of good things, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, dove into or I should say, dove back into a lot of stuff this weekend. That just because had a 3-day weekend, and for the first time in a long time, no plans. Like I think our camping trip 2 weeks ago really kind of took so much out of us that we just didn't make any plans for the 4th of July, and it felt kind of good. So just found myself going back and diving back into some more DuckTales. Found myself finally getting around to watching some of the new Duncanville that's come back, because I don't know if I sang that show's praises enough last year when it came out with its first season.
I can't
Yeah,
wait to catch up. That's part of my plan for this week.
yeah. So like, just excited about that. So for a time when there was not much going on, in terms, I actually did a lot this weekend. Also, gaming wise, really struggling to Microsoft is not being very clear, as always is their case with the Xbox, about what is and isn't available to somebody that doesn't have an Xbox that still wants to kind of get into their games, because they were so quick to be like, you don't even need to own an Xbox anymore to play Xbox games. But then if you go and do any research on their website about how to do it, it's a fucking like nightmare back and forth between like 3 different pages about like what works and what doesn't on the PC and all that. So I'm trying to like parse that right now. So if anybody has any like clear idea of what's going on there, hit me up and let me know, because like all I want to know right now is if my Stadia controller will work, because it says that it supports USB and Bluetooth gaming controllers. And so like, if I plug in my USB for my Stadia controller, will that work? Because if so, that opens a whole new world for me in terms of Xbox gaming. But if you look at the list of supported controllers, everything that's listed is like a Microsoft controller or a Power 5 or whatever it is, Power A, whatever. Like, I was just like, okay, are those all you support? Because there's nothing to indicate that that's all they support. Those are just their recommended controllers, which, so that's been a nightmare.
I don't know. I think that for the $1, it'd be worth trying the month and seeing if the controller works. Blaze the trail that you want to see. Solve the problem for others.
I don't know if I want to waste that chance yet, is my thing. I would rather know that my stuff works and then like take the month to like go into a bunch of shit. Whereas if I know like, no, that controller's not going to work, that's okay. Like I will look into other things, and then I will pay that $1 and try your thing out proper. I don't want to lose that entrance, that entry into what could possibly be a pretty rad experience. Like, so it's just Microsoft just shooting themselves in the foot with me personally as a possible customer.
I mean, I have the Xbox, and I just said, I think I need to consider restarting the Game Pass.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't using it, so I let it wane. And then I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I'm doing other stuff.
It sounds like such a cool idea. Just like everything has been with them, with this whole Xbox One experience, like, or what is the name of it?
Xbox Series.
Yeah, like it's everything has sounded like this close to getting me there. It's just that they never can quite clarify anything enough for me to be willing to drop the money for them. Like, if they just have some of the muckiest like marketing out there, and I don't know why somebody has not cleared this up for anybody.
Yeah, I think it's because they don't want it clear. They just want you to jump in and then solve the problems yourself, which is not great, but that's the thing. They just want to be appealing on paper, and then you learn if there are any problems. And you say gross, but like, think about Stadia, Luna, all of these other cloud-based like platforms. They're not appealing on paper.
Yeah, I was going to say, and like, you contrast this with the PlayStation 5 and their whole upgrade path system that they have been super clear on every step of the way, and they've caught nothing but shit about it. I mean, just this past week, the Ghosts of Tsushima. Yeah. Am I saying that right? Yeah. But the director's cut version coming out, and I was like, you know what? Maybe this is the time I play this game. Everybody told me I should have played it, and I was interested in it. It was just at the time I didn't have the time or the cash to do so. But maybe I can save up a little bit over the next couple of months and just buy one, and I'll buy the PS5 version, because I know that by the end of the year I want to get a PS5 if I can, if there's one available to me. So like, with that in mind, I was like, maybe this is the time to get in on this game. And then like, I personally don't have any problem with the pricing structure, but any of the research that I do on it is everybody from like Reddit users to straight up actual game journalists have done nothing but rip them apart for this idea that there's this extra charge on top to get the director's cut version. Then on top of that, there's an extra $10 if you want the PS5 compatible one and all of this stuff. And I'm just like just tell me what it costs. And like games already are expensive. Like if I have to save for an extra week to play the game, all right, I have to do that. Like I'm ready for that. But everybody out there just ripping them to shreds, and they've done nothing but just put a pricing structure out for people.
I think what it is the first time that console players are really having to come to terms with the idea of the patch or upgrade to a game, because I mean, like, DLC is one thing, but essentially the same game upgraded and you have to pay for it. That's unheard of.
And to clarify, it's essentially the same game between the 4 and 5 versions of the director's cut. Everything that's in the director's cut, from what I've understood, is a ton of stuff, because in addition to there being upgrades to graphics and things like that, and all of the other already available downloadable content being included on that, in addition to that, there's this whole other new part of the game that is apparently like a huge like chunk of game that was not in the original version. So like in a weird way, people have been trying to really like come to terms with the fact that like they don't mind the idea of buying the game again. It's literally just the amount of money to buy the upgrade, and then on top of that to buy the PS5 like possible version. It seems like it's just screwing a bunch of people, according to them, not to me. And I'm just like, yeah, but like this idea that you buy a piece of software and it should work on 2 different consoles is just weird to me. Like that's not how it works. So like paying the extra $10 so that it works on 2 different versions of your software, that's a pretty sweet deal. Like you're basically licensing it for a whole other console. And I think there's too many people out there that equate the PS5 versus the PS4 as honestly, as like what you're saying, as just a patch. And it's like, it's not that simple, guys. It's a whole other system. Why would you ever treat it any other way? I don't know. It's a weird attitude to have as far as I'm concerned.
I don't know. I think you fall into that hole because of the price, because so far the hurdle to next gen gaming is $10.
Yeah.
Like new PS5 games are $70.
Right.
Where PS4 games were $60. So like that has just become a huge thorn in a certain part of the group's side. And like for me, I'm not buying games new because of it. And Sony, like to their credit, in a weird, gross, thank you corporate mommy way, it's only available in physical form through PlayStation Direct. So like it's not going to be sold to Walmart and then Walmart discounts it to $40.
You mean specifically the
physical PlayStation 5 version of the director's cut of the game,
right. Yeah.
is only available from Sony
right now. I mean,
nope.
that could change.
Maybe right now, and you're right, it could change, but like that seems to be their marketing thing, so that you have to pre-order it so they don't produce too many. Like it seems like they're kind of taking the limited run games marketing scheme and applying it to their own first party game.
Yeah, well,
and I think that's where people are also nervous.
Yeah, but part of that then is that this is such a unique like thing. Like we've never really had this director's cut on the precipice of 2 systems at the same time, and so like they're hedging their bets by doing it that way, and yeah, that sucks. But I don't know. I guess what it is for me is it's not that you shouldn't be upset about these things, and like you said, if you're not happy,
adjust.
Well, the game's go.
Siege.
To that point, there was actually a bunch of PS5 digital games on sale this past couple of weeks. They actually did do that as part of their like Summer of Fun or whatever it is, the deal thing that they're doing right now. So a lot of people were like, they never go on sale, and then a bunch of other people were like, well, except right now, they actually a lot of them are on sale, so we should maybe drop that particular argument. But like so like that was kind of in the water for it. But then like it's to me, it's like I I don't necessarily see like them being malicious in their pricing so much as it is like that's just gonna right now be the cost of things. I mean, there's just so much going on in the world right now that is driving the cost up on so many things, and hopefully the bubble bursts on all of this stuff, and they are able to maybe once they stop producing PS4 games, they'll be able to drop the price of PS5 games down $10 to that $60. Maybe not. Maybe they sell enough that they see they don't have to. But like, if you're not happy with the price on something, I get that. But to get online and then talk about how PlayStation is a trash company because they're not willing to bring the price down on their product is like is such a weird level to me. Like if you're not happy with it, don't buy their product, but don't act surprised, I guess. It's the same place I landed when everybody was surprised that Sony was going to put an exclusivity deal on Spider-Man in their game, you know, or a couple of months ago when Microsoft bought Bethesda, and then instantly Bethesda was like, by the way, this next game of ours, they've decided they're going to make it a Microsoft exclusive, and everybody's just like, oh, this is it, this is the end of gaming, nobody cares about gamers anymore. And it's just like, guys, I guess what it is like they've never cared about you like you put it, like they're not your mommy and daddy. Like they're not here to cultivate you in some special way. Like their business is making money off of an entertainment. Like you either can buy into it or you can't, guys. Like you can't act like there's somebody sitting at Sony being like, how can we fuck them this week, let's find out. Like that doesn't exist.
Right. But the problem is, this is how gamers always act, and sometimes they get what they want.
Yeah.
So it's not going to change anytime soon.
Yeah.
Because even though those victories are few in Mass Effect 3, it doesn't change the fact that once you have that one victory, it proves acting this way gets results. It's exactly why you don't negotiate with terrorists. Because once you prove that you're willing to negotiate with them, where does it end?
Yeah.
And on that, this is where this episode ends. So, if there's any topic that we didn't touch on in this episode that you think we should have, why don't you shoot a message to Siegen at Siege versus the World. Let him know, and we'll try to fix that.
Yeah, and if there's any other recommendations that you have in the edgy comedy genre that you think that maybe Dev should take a look at to maybe cleanse his palate after the poor experience with America, which is just a great sentence all unto itself, hit him up at Devin D. Decker.
All right. So until next time, Will, please bring us home.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devin Decker and Siegen Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.